Welcome to APPL-i Insights. In this three-part series, which we are calling Cut to the Case, we help viewers gain a basic understanding of how case studies work and introduce how one should structure their thinking in them. Each episode will be presented as a simulation of an actual case study, where we will analyze each question and answer. In today's episode, we understand how a company functions and introduce due diligence for a market entry case. This is episode 1, and we will be covering first, our 3C model to find initial stakeholders. Second, Porter's 5 forces and analysis. And finally, different ways to enter a new market.
So before we get down to solving the case at hand, I would like to start by getting a flavor for the thought processes executives have. So Anshika, if you were the CEO of a fast fashion company, what do you think would be the most important factors or concerns that you faced?
So when it comes to I think the most pressing characteristics which stand out are style and quality, that too at a fixed price tag. Given that the target market are in particularly very price sensitive, and the fast fashion brands cater largely to students and millennials who keep up with the trends on social media, I would be thinking of how to market my brand as the brand. So mainly focusing on including new trends in the media and keeping the price low. That would be my primary concern, apart from, of course, looking at the financials of the company.
Okay, so our client is a clothing company. The company has both their lines of in-person stores as well as an online website. They own a number of smaller clothing brands and also have some exclusive suppliers which manufacture the clothing sold. The primary target is under the age of 35. The company now wishes to diversify their product line and wants to enter the market for footwear. Should they do it? And if yes, how?
I have a few questions first. So I would like to know a little more about the company itself, like the sales and reputation in the market. Also, are there any specific goals that they're trying to fulfill by entering this market?
Okay, so the company is fairly reputed and has stores in 12 countries, including the United States and the Europe. They hold roughly 27% of the fast fashion market. As for goals, they are mainly wishing to expand their operations and gain new consumers. Increasing revenue would be another subsequent long-term goal. They are looking to enter the market soon, preferably starting from the US stores, unless you find a better solution.
Okay, can I have a few moments to organize my thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead.
So for any case of business problem, information is most important. It's crucial to understand both the company's intentions and its operations. You can take reasonable assumptions wherever needed, but do state them out.
So going by my initial thoughts, the decision should be a good fit, mainly because of the brand's reputation and existing product, and also because the footwear market is not shrinking, it's still growing. That's something I think will come up later in the course of the solution. Mainly, I would structure the solution on the basis of three major considerations. One of which would be the current competition of the footwear market. The second one would be our client's product differentiation and target, looking into if they're a good fit for the market. And finally, an initial pathway of how they should do it.
Now, this was perhaps the most important part of the interview, figuring out what factors are involved in the decision we take and how we decide upon them. The way we recommend is to think of all the stakeholders involved. For most business operations, the major stakeholders can be identified from our CCC model. First up is the company itself. The most common objective a company tries to achieve is to maximize profit. This could be integrated with other objectives, such as gaining new consumers, finding a competitive strategy, or supply chain problems. However, the basic objective is usually to increase profit or troubleshoot operations for that final goal. Next are our consumers. These are the people who pay the company for its goods or services. For every rupee, dollar, or yen a potential consumer has, he or she has hundreds of options on how to spend it. Thus, we need to ensure that they spend it on the commodity we are selling in the market. Consumers usually want lower pricing or a higher quality of commodities. Now, when it comes to consumers, It's important to ask questions like, who are our main consumers and why do they buy our products? Is it because of a low price, variety of options we provide, or a luxury image? These questions help us find our target audience, understand product differentiation, and more. This target consumer is then usually targeted by what is known as the marketing mix of 4Ps: product, price, place, and promotion. Finally, our competitors. Now, we need to factor in who our competitors are. Unlike in the rare case of a perfect monopoly, we won't be the only ones selling a particular item. Other companies will also try to maximize revenue in what's usually a zero sum situation. They might try out strategies like cutting costs or inventing new features which pose a threat to our sales. So, we need to think of how competition would respond to our strategies and what can be done to gain an edge over them. Of course, these aren't the only considerations to take in. We often need to face caveats about things like technology, for example. Rapid technology could completely remove the need for a product or lead to a company shutting down. From BlackBerry to Xerox, there are various examples of companies which failed to keep up with technological innovations. We could also have problems like with suppliers or financing cycles. So, factors like market volatility and operational efficiency are also important. But company, consumers, and competitions are usually fundamental to cases and to the real world. These form the fundamentals of understanding business intentions and how to solve case studies.
So firstly, for the market itself, I'll study the market for footwear in terms of its size, growth rate, and customers. Taking an estimate, footwear is a fairly essential commodity to most, and the market in the USA. Seeing how the company's fast fashion, the target customers would be upper middle class, with a majority of millennials and Z. Are there any available the make of the footwear sales and trends?
Yes, we do have that. So I'll share my screen with you. Revenue in the footwear market amounts to around US $86 billion in 2020. The market is expected to grow annually by 5.5%. Per person revenues of US $58.06 are expected to be generated in 2020.
Okay, so according to the data, which states that casual footwear has the highest demand of all segments, this is in line with the client's expertise in fast fashion, mainly because of the two styles pair well together. I believe the company leveraged its competency of fast fashion to start by introducing a range of casual footwear, and then, according to sales and feedback, onward to different styles. It also goes well because when it comes to athletic or leather footwear, there is a lot more technicality that goes into it, I believe. Not to mention that these segments have well-established brands, which makes these sectors much harder to break into. So I definitely think that due to the company's experience with casual wear, as well as the styles and pre-existing customer base, casual footwear would be the best option for now.
Okay, that sounds great.
And now, as far as the competition goes, the first would be how fragmented the industry is. Who is our competition? What size market share does each competitor have? I assume that the market seems to have little differentiation when it comes to casual footwear, especially in clusters like athletic and non-athletic footwear. If possible, I'd like to have data on the market share of the major players in the industry and try to trace out the USP of each brand to help us better understand the customer base and the customer behavior.
Okay, so this is the data we have of our main competitor.
Okay. So from what I can gauge, again, I believe that we should be focusing our efforts on using the brand's existing customer base as a good starting point. Also, again, we should focus on casual wear shoes like runners, floats, denims, etc., which will help us leverage our clothing line's experience with fabric and other overlapping core competencies. I can think of combination offers like options for customers to buy matching sets with their apparel or footwear for outfits, which is in trend with the current range for coordinated outfits. Overall, the brand should be able to keep well placed with casual shoes and maybe further down the line, other types of footwear. I think we can carry out a barrier to market entry study through the Porter 5 analysis.
So Porter's analysis is one of the first tools you'll be introduced to apart from the standard SWOT analysis and the pestle analysis. Porter's 5 forces model is an analysis tool that uses 5 industry forces to determine the intensity of competition in the industry and its profitability levels. It has the following components. Threats of new entrants. This force determines how easy or not it is to enter a particular industry. Threats of new entrants is high when, for example, low amounts of capital is required to enter a market. Existing companies do not have the required patents for their products. There are low government regulations, etc. Bargaining powers of suppliers. Strong bargaining power allows suppliers to sell higher priced or lower quality raw materials to their buyers. Suppliers have strong bargaining power when there are fewer suppliers there in the market, few substitutes of those raw material exist, or supplier holds scarce resources. Bargaining powers of buyers. Buyers have the high power to demand lower prices or higher quality products from industry producers when their bargaining power is strong. Buyers can exert strong bargaining power in a number of cases, such as in a market where only few buyers exist. There are many substitutes to the products that the seller is selling, or the buyers are very price sensitive. Threat of substitutes. This force is especially threatening when buyers can easily find substitute products with an attractive price or better quality, and when buyers can switch from one product to or a service to another with little or a very marginal decrease or increase in cost. Rivalry among existing competitors. This force is the major determinant on how competitive and profitable an industry is in a competitive industry. Firms have to compete aggressively for a market share, which result in low profits. Rivalry among competitors can be intense when, for example, there are many competitors in the market, the existing barriers in the markets are very high, competitors are of equal sizes, etc. So, although Porter only introduced 5 forces affecting an industry, many say there is also a 6th force, that is, complements. Complements increase the demand of the primary products along with which the complement product is used, thus increasing the firm's and industry's profit potential in both these markets. For example, iTunes was created to complement the iPod, and it added value to both the iTunes and the iPod. As a result, the sales increased for both the products, increasing Apple's profitability by a very large amount.
Now, the Porter 5 application in this case, first of all, the threat of new entrants, it is safe to assume that the footwear market has low barriers to entry and the R&D cost is extremely low as well. Not much specialized knowledge is required to get into the field. Then coming to the buying power of suppliers, it is extremely low considering the company can have numerous suppliers. And buying power of buyers, usually the customers in this niche are very loyal to the brand. Hence, the bargaining power is relatively low for them. However, wholesalers have a high bargaining power as they can always switch to a low-cost brand. Moving on to the threat of substitution, it is very low because footwear is an essential commodity. So everyone must buy shoes. The market is thus relatively risk-free. When it comes to the brand itself, brand loyalty rules the industry. Hence, we can safely conclude that threat is very low if we become successful enough to command loyalty. Going to the rivalry amongst existing competitors, the competitive rivalry is extremely high because there are a lot of well-established companies with significantly large resources and high brand loyalty. As price consciousness is an important factor, especially in the casual footwear market, which is very price elastic, price plays a significant role in influencing the customers. Apart from this, there aren't many barriers on exit or any harsh regulations either. So on the whole, I think the decision to enter the market is reasonably well backed. Now we need to decide on how to price our products and taking into consideration the urban target customers, we should probably have a product in 2 different segments. One for higher quality, more expensive groups, and another for more discounted, pocket-friendlier groups. As for how to enter the market, I'll map out the various routes in which we can do so.
When it comes to market entry, there are three major options. First, start from scratch or start a new business. Second, acquire an existing player within the desired industry. And third, to form a joint venture or a strategic alliance with another player with similar interests. Now, what we usually do is analyze the pros and cons as per the company's available funding, expertise, and needs. However, you can think of some usually true cases which happen. For example, when you start a business from scratch, you get way more flexibility with how you want the products to turn out for setting up, say, supply chains, operations, etc. Basically, starting from scratch requires a huge amount of resources and maybe a lot of expertise as well. But it will also give you the most flexibility and options with how you want the business to turn out. When it comes to acquiring an existing player, what you do get is a huge advantage when it comes to existing supply chains, existing operations, and existing knowledge and interest in that area. Thus, if you can acquire a player who is relatively well established in the sector, you can get a huge advantage over starting over. However, you might need to put in more resources if you want to modify or customize the business. Lastly, forming a strategic alliance. This offers you the least amount of flexibility, but is also the least risky when it comes to most businesses. Thus, to find out the best option for each company, you need to analyze what the company really wants and think of which option suits the company the best.
Okay, so the clothing brand itself is very well known, but they lack intensive experience and understanding in the footwear industry. The best way forward definitely would be to acquire a smaller player which is well known in the footwear market. And in case the company doesn't start from scratch, I'll eliminate the joint venture option mainly because the two parties won't have any common deliverables. If the company does start from scratch, then they will have more flexibility and creativity as to how they want to build their model and brand. But at the same time, they'll need to bring in expertise and experience, which will be very difficult. If the company acquires another player, they can eliminate potential competition and also acquire talent and understanding about the footwear market. They can also bind the brand name if it is well known, and it's easier to launch the product in the market. But this has its own set of issues, such as the cost of acquisition, the product quality, etc. So, as far as the exact strategy goes, that will need more information about the brand's available funds and the financial health as well.
Okay, that sounds great. So could you sum that up for me?
Yes, sure. So, in summary, the brand should enter the footwear market, preferably with an acquisition if possible. The target customers would be the urban middle class. The company should start out with casual footwear, and then the products could be segmented into two main categories depending on the price.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
So it's hard to fit an entire case study and its solutions in just a 15-minute episode. But we really hope we are able to give you a flavor of how these case studies are approached. So the first thing to do is identify all the stakeholders, that is all the people that it affects, and then attack each aspect of it. So for example, when it comes to market entry, here's how we can approach.
So here are a few of the relevant questions that you might have to think about when dealing with a market entry case. Look at the various factors involved, such as the company that you're dealing with, as well as the market that it wants to enter. Is it really a good fit or not? So you could think about where the company is in its life cycle. Is it growing? Is it stagnant? Or is it declining? How is the market and its competitive landscape? These will help you figure out whether you should allow your client to enter a market or not. Next up, you can also use one of the very famous diagnostic tools we introduced today, the Porter's Five Forces analysis. This can give you a fair idea of whether your client or the company will encounter a high or low barrier to entry for the industry that it wants to enter into. Finally, here are the three ways in which a company can enter a new market, starting from scratch, a joint venture, or an acquisition. Now, what usually happens is that you'll have to do a cost benefit analysis or more detailed study before you can narrow down on a final solution through which way a company should enter a new market. On the whole, we hope we were able to give you a good flavor of how case studies work and how you can approach a market entry case. Please stay tuned for the next episode where we will handle profitability cases. See you there.